Good morning, good morning, good morning. Slightly better this morning. Slightly. I don't want to get fucking carried away. So that's a positive. Let's see, this is science. This is real-time fucking science. This is real boring shit. That's why it's way easier just to grab some fucking chemical that's been around for fucking ages and wrap it in a fucking wrapper of slow release something or other, and then get sexy young girls to go and sell it to doctors. That's a way easier thing. This actual science, this takes fucking ages. It's really boring. It's time consuming. And it would be costly as well to do. Imagine. Like, you can't just, like, I'm doing this, but you'd have to pay me to do it. And then what are you going to even fucking sell? Nothing. You can't sell this shit. It's already inside all of us. So that's a real tricky part of what I'm doing. Really good response from upper hamstrings from doing this opening up exercise, which is what I find is, I found this all the way up, is I'm now exploring range of movement and range of muscle stimulation, which would have been previously just terrible, like absolute agony. Just there's no way I could have done it beyond the point of being able to do it. And this progression to get to here is pretty much 2 solid years of, like, I've had little bits where I would like drift off, but 2 solid years of like waking stuff up, getting confidence, like pushing, healing, recovering, playing around with diet. And yeah, it's diet, weirdly, was probably the least effective thing, although I do notice, for me particularly, was the thing I spent too much time on and got the least benefit from. So that's a pretty big statement. And it's something that I would say at this stage, the amount of content out there regarding diet, whether that be supplements or macro diet concepts, although there is a benefit, in my case specifically, where there was like pretty serious shit going on, it got in the way. And so that's a really tricky thing to kind of approach. And that's where, if you were a physician, you'd have to, it's actually, after bagging out medical doctors and things like that, that's where I do kind of go on their side. I do believe that they are kind of right in that this emphasis on diet stuff, although, like, the way I think of that is, like, it gives you your 10-15% on top that will take you from good to optimal. I believe that firmly. And so it's like, if I had lots of resources right now, I would be like, I did commit money to taking at least like a green vitamin supplement because I don't have a garden right now. If I had a garden, I wouldn't do that. And I can't afford like vegetables and greens. It's that's the easiest way. And that kind of fits different. That's like a nutrition thing. That's like you should be having something, at least one thing, whether it's a multivitamin, and I think the green powders are just better. So that's that. But as far as the macro diet goes, for my case specifically, I think it did more damage than good, worrying about that. And it was, although that's kind of complicated because I wasn't really eating optimal anyway. I was eating like a lot of fast food and stuff like that. But I think it came down to mainly just it's the main thing, like that 80-20 principle. If it's all that, it's like none of that matters. In my case specifically, what I worry about is that although mine may have been overactivated because I really just hope to God that it was, because if it wasn't, we're going to have an epidemic of this shit, and this shit is fucked. Like, it is so hard to fix. And so like if I look at it scientifically, either I have some type of genetic disorder that led to this level, is that, or I was and that's like, there's probably 5 things. So there's that. Secondly, I just am a kind of obsessive person, so I obsessively was working on my business and doing other things and the singing, that just like the obsessive nature, like the intense nature of how I was doing that led to the really bad response. 3, the one that I think is most obvious is because of the timeline, is that the combination of a brain injury led to this response. And I anecdotally can notice there is such a difference in my personality that something has changed, that I will, like, I have a weird like hyper focus thing now, that on certain things, like if I get into something, I'd really go into it and explore it really deeply, whereas I wouldn't do that before, but I was younger, so it's hard to tell. And then I just think all the other things did get in the way. I had a girlfriend that was very on diet. She was like, the classic things like milk and things like that. And weirdly, like, I've just 2 days stopped having milk and lowered things, and I can already see my face like getting less puffy, things like that. So I think those things do play a role, but in my case specifically, it was it was a physical malfunction to do with an over adaptation to a specific task, which is and this is what I'm trying to get. This is why I'm documenting this so heavily, because take for example, I have a friend who's recently just had pretty serious head trauma to do with a blood clot or something like that. But this could apply across the board. And I think that if there's one thing that I can get from this, is like this effect, if this effect is understood, because it makes sense to me. Basically what I do is I go, if my body really had such a trauma that thought it was going to die. And then I was already in a stressful thing. I had 3 children, no money, like lots of crazy stress. Went straight into that. I can see how, like, our bodies do optimize for what we are doing. So I can see how under that circumstances that my body may, and because I did stop doing other things, and even when I started then trying to incorporate physical stuff, because it's not like I wasn't being physical, my job was quite physical, but it was just limited. It was the limited nature. And then even then after that, when I started doing things like working out, that just amplified the limited nature of my movement. Because a lot of conventional working out, if you are stuck in this limited pattern, you're just making the problem worse. And it's where I think just dance should be, and it is, this is why this is like, it's not, I'm not reaching here. This is in every tribal culture. There is an aspect of dance. Even in our culture, there's an aspect of dance. And it seems like just, I don't know, whether it's intentional or whether it's just appearing because of some beautiful, spiritual or adaptation thing, that dance is coming in to our society because it just is vital. Like, it's not something that we do. My generation, weirdly, was this weird like dance was just this thing that wasn't done. Like I don't know what really happened, but we need to learn how to incorporate this into our world. And I think schools are the best place to do it. So it's like, it should be just from the get-go, from pre-primary. It's like, oh, this is like dance class now. Do dancing just all the way up. Because it should be just something that is, see, at the moment, like, I feel so much weirdness. That's why I'm trying to, like, I do stuff and I share it and I'm like, okay, for me personally, I'm telling you, it feels really fucking weird. I'm like a tradesman. I'm kind of I'm a guy. Like, it's this weird, sometimes it's not always like performative. Most of the time it's not performative. It's just a part of human life. It's meant to be, like, we're meant to move pretty much constantly, and we've adapted these worlds. Like, the way I feel now, having because I have such a trauma now to not do that, so I have to like look at my future, and literally everything is processed through that. I'm like, where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do. It's like, well, how am I going to do that? Because that's like, here I have a space, it's large, it's open, I can hang from the fucking things, I can do all this shit, because it's like the number one priority, because I'm not going back down in that hole where I can't move ever again. And I just kind of feel like we're building the foundations right now of a society that is going to just die. And the comeback from getting down there, the more you lose, the harder it is to get back. And that is what fucking terrifies me. And when I factor in, like, as a kid, we moved around all the time. We ran through the bush. We were always playing outside. We were always moving, always doing stuff, always like fighting and wrestling and jumping off stuff and rolling on the ground and doing all these things. So when I'm trying to re-stimulate that, there is memory there. And I worry a lot that we are creating an adaptation specially, I hope that's the right word, that may be undoable. And it's, it's not good. And it's getting accentuated. Like, one of the biggest things, this gym culture that's sprung up, that I've benefited from, I've sold a lot of gym mirrors in my time. But I think it's a little bit lost, and it's all about aesthetics of like large muscles. And this is a weird point to say. It's like, large muscles are not a adaptation to do with movement. They're just not. They're purely an aesthetic. And this is where, if you get to the top, there's nothing wrong with being a bodybuilder. If you want to be a bodybuilder, if you want to commit your life to that, you know what you're doing. You're a bodybuilder. You're competing with other bodybuilders in this thing where you're meant to look like a statue. But when you trickle that down, it like lifts, because of these devices, because we've got this thing, it's like that's being perceived as the most functional body type, and it just isn't. A functional body, especially, and this, like, I'll speak from males, because females don't have as much of this, because, like, funnily enough, when you look at a optimal female body, it is, like, if you take a dancer, like, they kind of generally have a optimal female body in our culture these days. And that's because I don't know what it's because. It's just that's a phenomenon. So this is meaning that women are being stimulated towards their optimal, whereas men are constantly being stimulated towards this ideal that just isn't real. It's like a statue, and this is everywhere. Like this I consider like a virus, like a mind virus, because it exists in almost everything we're seeing, and it's getting like built upon in this way, where we're not being exposed to like men, young boys and things aren't being exposed to, or less and less and less, to like optimal athletes. Although they still are. Like, we still have sport, but even into sport, this is pushing in, where the aesthetic is becoming more important than the movement factor. And it's kind of the biggest indicator. Like, if you look at tennis players, tennis is probably very close to the most optimal activity that a human can do. It incorporates almost every type of movement. It's like lots of stamina built in, a lot of upper body, like power, efficient power. And like, when you realize it's like these tennis players, they're hitting a ball back as fast as they can. That racket may as well be a sword. We've got thousands of years of that type of movement, even in like battle. And they're not ripped. They're not huge, because it doesn't make sense. Like speed, agility, all these things, that is the optimal thing for men. It's like this bodybuilder thing, although like intimidating, like it is, it's like it's tipping into the same thing with women, like fake boobs and stuff like this, except it's I see it as almost worse because it boobs are like almost like this thing that you can take them or leave them. They're actually put on there. Whereas when you're stressing your body with weight, the problem is, see, and everyone, like all the science goes to this thing of like, yeah, so you got to lift weight to get, and that's right, but it's like that weight doesn't have to be weight. It can be kinetic weight, which is movement and stress and G-forces and twisting and all these things. That's far more important for longevity, for like lifelong health. And so even like running is this great thing, but it's on a fixed plane. Running with shoes on, especially like running with like running shoes that have that curve. It's like you're just doing this straight thing, and that is what caused me all the damage. And so part of like, I went on this, when I started getting good responses, I started doing these like really long walks and things like that, thinking that you know, the more the better. I was like, because that's out there. This is kind of the Goggins thing, you know what I mean? Like just walk and walk. And I was doing like fucking 9-hour walks in sand and shit like that with no shoes on. And it was good. Like it gave me a fitness level that I seem to be able to like maintain. Like so I'm not saying to not do that. I'm glad that I know that I can, if I chuck, you know, even in 40 degrees, I can chuck a bag on, go out, and my body will be like, oh, we're doing this again. Like I can feel that is there. But it's the movement. And this is even different than yoga. Yoga is good. Yoga is like this stretching thing. But there's something about what you get from dance, and martial arts is very similar. I would say basically I think martial arts is dance. It's the dance for people that want to, yeah. It just is dance. So there's something about actively using your muscles, especially muscles that are not as that don't have the pathways built up as largely. I'd say that's what the process of dancing or of martial arts is. It's about stimulating acuity, fine acuity in muscles that aren't immediately obvious. And it should be incorporated into everyone's lives on some level. Because we're gonna have a generation that is completely fucked. These digital environments, everything, it's too easy. I find I've got into a pattern now where I don't have phone credit, and I have to, like, my phone goes up to this Wi-Fi thing, and then just that difference that I don't have my phone on me to be able to go on the two main apps, Instagram and Facebook, it's just life-changing. Like, you just can't. I mean, they may as well change the fucking Instagram app to a fucking meth pipe at this stage, because that's what it is. And there's no, like, I was speaking about this the other day, and I said the one thing that Instagram could do to repair itself, to give itself longevity, I think, would be you get, but it can't, because, like, I think it almost can now. This is almost the responsibility it has. It, like, has to try and do something, and it has the optimal position. So it kind of goes like, oh, if we change it, we'll lose position. It's like, no, because you're in top position, you have the emphasis to fucking try and change it. You can always change back, but you've got to try to fix it because you've built something that's fucking dangerous and shit. And what I said is, like, I think it should limit you to, say, 10 minutes of viewing unless you post something. It's not hard. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're creating, like, stalker culture, which is weird. And I'm telling you, it's fucking weird. Like, it's really, really weird. And as a pioneer of that environment, as a pioneer that hasn't benefited, because there's always going to be a larger proportion of them, most of them probably just stopped. I'm just fucking weird. I just kept going. So you've, like, all you're doing is filtering out the most, like, the lowest form. Like, it's always going to be slightly more. Like, to read Solzhenitsyn, Gulag Archipelago, or to read the Bible, or to read something fucking reaching is always harder than to read a porno mag, a Playboy. And we used to know that. Like, that was humanity. You know, it wasn't, people weren't going into things with a Playboy hanging out of it. It's like, yet these systems have been built purely on that. It's like, do we go to school and imagine they just handed out Playboys? That'd be a big fucking deal, wouldn't it? No, they expect to, you know, have some type of thing. You've built a fucking chocolate factory. And the world is suffering because of it. You've built a 24-hour chocolate factory. Where you don't have to do anything. It's like, that's the easiest solution. It's like, you make it, it's social media. It's not everyone's a star. It's not everyone's a fucking celebrity. And this is like, I literally have conversations with people, like close people in my life, about what I do, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's out for everyone in the world. I'm like, you don't understand how that works. No, it's not out for everyone in the world, because if it was, we'd be having a way different conversation. It's just there. It's just me doing something. This emphasis, like, I'm not Rick Arden, who's a newsreader from Perth. I'm still just me. I'm the person that you know, still doing this. If you filter everything through this, like, you're a celebrity or you're trying to be a celebrity, I'm never trying to be a fucking celebrity. I'm just being me. I've adapted in this environment. This environment was there. Like, I started doing stuff. So I started doing, like, music shit when I was not very good, as a training exercise, as a confidence building thing. I wasn't thrust into some type of thing, and it's a far different. So the way I've been, I'll say treated, but it's like, well, it's probably better to say, like, responded to, is exactly what I'd expect from a culture of people, that the majority of them have been ushered into this, like, stalker-like persona, where they've been so conditioned by, you know, watching Australian Idol or Dancing with the Stars, that they sit there and, like, just view, but they haven't made the connection that it's like, hey, this person, like, I'm getting intimate access to this person's life, and there's ways that person actually knows that I'm doing that, and I'm still just treating him like he's some anonymous person on TV. That's fucking weird. Like, that is the problem. And this is why you have to have tools. You can't just create a voyeuristic culture on the culture and then only and then only bring the ice cream to the top. Because the biggest thing is this isn't like, social media can't work in the old model because it's far different. In fact, it's the complete opposite. The old model was closed. The old massive network thing was a closed system. So it's like you couldn't enter it. So you had to learn to perform, and then you would go and perform at your highest level. You had to do that. But there were other places. There's like open mics. There's, social theatre, all these things that existed. Social media encompasses the whole sphere, not just this commercial pinnacle. And it's weird because it's like we need to almost have a split thing that we can deal with this. And it's going to be hard because you can see those commercial entities trying to take ownership. And there's probably a bit of that's okay. I think we do need loud voices, loud, concentrated areas so that we can, I think that's important for keeping our overall culture together. But then there needs to be an understanding that it's everything else is just a person. They're just a person. And one of the weirdest things I get to is I'm doing this thing. I'm just a person doing this shit. I share lots of little things because I'm doing it anyway. So I just do it to be active in that area, to kind of keep a log. Some of it's for me, some of it's for whatever. It's just there. And what I feel like is it would be so fucking weird right now if I did perk up to any of those things. That it would I'd be like, yeah, this thing sucks. This thing doesn't fucking work. I couldn't think of a worse way to design a support structure for potential other people. I feel like I've fucking battled through hell to try and do this thing, which is always kind of a story. This existed in the real world as well. If you most people that have done anything, they've got some story about having to go and do gigs and all this shit, and it was terrible, and people throwing bottles and things at them. So I'm not I'm not I'm not naive about the fact that there is always going to be a bit of any of that in the process. What I am concerned about is that, in my perception, there isn't a healthy way to, people can't use their own thing. It's like everything gets into the same box. If I do a video, a long form video saying about something, it's and then I do a song, and it's all just getting tarred into this same box. And that concerns me, because all that's happened is these tools and this network has extended the potential to be able to show your actual self. And everyone out there has portions of themselves that aren't curated for perfection. And so that is what I've constantly tried to show. I don't want the internet to be television take Mark II. That just doesn't make sense to me. And if it is, that's when I'll stop. And there's so many things we've gotten so... The problem is because it captures the whole world. And everything now has to be filtered through it. So everything now has this aspect. You could have sat and written a book in the past. And this is what I'm claiming this type of censorship has directly affected. It's like, you're not just saying, like, you're making it so that I can't even think. I have to be concerned even with the way I'm thinking, because this is just me thinking. This is me thinking in 2024. This is the tool I used for me to think. And whereas, like, you're denying me the ability to learn and to adapt and to change and to figure shit out. Like, no one knows what's going on. This is how stuff is figured out. These are new spaces, new tools, new environments. They have to go through this process. And no one, like, what it feels like for me is the way things are being spoken about by majority people who do not do anything. Or they may be participating in this very narrow broadcast style content where they're just like, everything is well thought out, everything is highly produced, everything is like gone through with a fine-tooth comb before they post it. So they're like, hey, I'm doing all this and you're just going and talking. We've got to shut that down. You could say things that are like whatever. So what it feels like to me is I've got an army lining up against me. And even though I started doing this well before any type of like focus came onto this, I've been in this environment for a decade. And now that you're having to be pushed into this environment to do whatever you do because you're a politician or you're a salesman or you're a business owner, whatever it is, you're now going, hey, we like it the way it is. We like this thing, and we don't want your potentially dangerous content being out there. And I still feel all the time. And what it happens is I'm like, oh, great. So I've got 10 years worth of just speaking freely that anyone who wished to do me harm can just go through, nitpick out something and enforce it on me. So I'm already in this. I'm already in jail. And this would be like, imagine to anyone out there thinking that that's a good idea. Imagine I said, well, I actually work for the Intelligence of the World Agency, and we've got everything you've ever done anyway, and so that's what I'm going to then throw on top of you. Then you'd go, oh shit, like everyone will have something. And this is where we need to, like, the idea of censorship on the internet is a Trojan horse for censorship of the world, because the world lives on the internet now. And I would argue that the exact opposite needs to happen. We've always known, don't trust what you see on the internet. That is the rule. We cannot control this space. We just can't. And so the internet should be a proving ground for concepts. It should be the modern day equivalent of the town square. Like, it should be a place that ideas can be discussed. And I have never, so me like exposing my anger towards the medical thing and the politics, like, that's important. That's an important thing. If I don't have a space I can do that, I might just fucking go and, start planning some actual thing. But this isn't the way it's working. We have those institutions literally barricading it out. And the fact that is just getting by, like, do you know what I mean? We're not talking about old style politics and old style censorship. Because in that period, in the old style, if you want to talk about it like that, it was known that there were always other things, there were other places to do things. People would have groups and people would have churches and clubs and things like that. that they can discuss, and that is all being shut out. And what's being happening is a perception of perfectness is being projected, like led on by this technological thing. And this is why we have like no one, every place I go, like to me, it's like, it's obvious the government is going to be flawed. It's just people, and people are flawed. Yet we all did exactly what they said. If garbage men, you know what I mean, like started doing that, everyone would be like, no. Like if the garbage men all got together and went, oh, now we just like, we as garbage men now want, you've got to now leave $10 with your bin. We don't get paid enough. There's a point where it's like, everyone will be like, no, we're not fucking doing that. And then like the garbage men would just stop fucking taking the garbage, and they'd maybe knock the garbage bins over if you didn't leave the $10. And if that got allowed, it's like, you'd probably pay the $10 pretty quickly. And this is where, if we think like politicians are just garbage men, they've put themselves there. They've put themselves there in a system that does not really look closely at what's going on there. We just kind of hope that it works, like the garbage men. You know what I mean? No one really, it's like, garbage men just literally pick up your rubbish and they go and stick it in a hole somewhere. That's our system. That's the end of it. That's exactly how it works. But as long as you don't have to fucking deal with it, and you don't have to pay for it, somehow the money happens somewhere. And that's how it works. Politics is the same. And so you can imagine, like, yeah, if the garbage men did that, paid $10, but if the garbage men were like, yeah, now we want your cars, you go, fuck off. We got to do something about these garbage men. They're getting too fucking carried away. And this is where we are with politics right now. And I think you get little glimmers of, say, the Barnaby Joyce slipping over a thing. It's like, yeah, and fucking look at him. Look at him. Don't make no mistake that he's a fucking old man. He's just an old man that grew up fucking, I don't know, whether he's 20 years, 30 years older than I am. Society has moved a lot in that period. I'm not the same as him. And some people would be quick to point out the negatives of like, oh yes, you're a millennial, or I don't even know if I'm a millennial. I don't think I am. But it's like, yeah, we've also progressed a bit, mate. And so we've got a structure being walled in by a percentage of a certain generation that has massive fucking issues. And so and this is where this technology has like enabled them temporarily to create walls. And they're trying to now defend those walls. But when we get down to it, it's like, who are you defending those fucking walls against? Us. We're meant to be who you're protecting. Like, so you're not going to get, politics is this is what I'm doing. I'm this generation's person doing this under this generation's rules. And if you want to continue to filter in the little, whipping boys that do as they're fucking told to protect your structure, you are going to be exposed on a long enough timeline. Because, you know what I mean? You entered politics with telex and fucking whatever else you were doing. You had to look in the yellow pages and do stuff, which is, I'm happy for you that you did that during this time. You may have been, if you're a politician in your 60s, 70s, 80s, you probably were cutting edge in your time. You are just not cutting edge now. And so if you try and close the world off to your perception, which is a very, like, and this is, it's not, I'm not even really bagging you out. It's like, I'll be the same. I'll be exactly the same. And hopefully, like, a young person, when I'm at that stage in life, will have the same presence and the same care to gently offer me that same advice of, hey, you're now trying to limit the world so that you are right, rather than allowing the new thing to rise up. And what that creates is tension and destabilization. Because anytime you are, like, the technological advancements, the cultural advancements, I won't even say advancements, I'll say adaptations or something like that, are so broad that you are very quickly exposing yourself to this self-serving behavior of going, oh, we want, say, Barnaby Joyce, just because he's in the news. It's like, so Barnaby Joyce is looking for like mini Barnaby Joyce, which he will be skewed in because he's not accurately understanding what's coming, because he's been in politics. He hasn't come up through the world. So he's going to falsely do whatever protects him. And the more that we get into that tension area, the more self-interest they have. They go like, oh fuck, we've pushed it too far. Now we're in danger. We're not just going to be able to like gracefully exit. We're going to be thrown out. And that's the progression that we're on. And just from myself personally, it's like, that's not what I'm trying to do. But there needs to be like a realistic evolution of these systems. Because the more you try and hold this artificial thing together, it just becomes obvious. And whereas like, see, what I would label myself as, I'm a stepping stone. I'm a transitory thing. Like, I'm still at least barely hanging on to the idea that that thing's okay. Whereas what will happen is, if you don't if you just go the easy one, so this guy is basically doing as he's told, and he's towing the line, he's going to miss the mark, which will be obvious at a certain tipping point to too much of the population. Whereas if you go the big leap down that's still accepting your structure, that's how it needs to happen. Otherwise, you get someone else on the complete opposite side of ideology that goes, we don't even need this structure, let's build our own structure. And then we have a gross fucking revolution of nothingness. So I can know, I appreciate the structure, I appreciate the history, I appreciate all the things that got us here. It's just that I know from personal experience and personal interaction with this environment, this leap's got to be big. It's in time, it won't be looked at as big. It'll just be looked at as like that. But if you take the small step, that we have a chance of it all collapsing. We need to take a big step now. We need to take a big step into going and looking at this as a resource. Most people, from what I've seen, have a built-in like respect of the whole thing. We've seen that. That's how you got away with doing what you did in the pandemic. But don't take that too far. So learn the same lesson, just the same as everyone put masks on and everyone did everyone did that, right? I don't think you should have gone that far, but just to take that as the example that everyone did do that means that everyone does want to help each other out. So it's like, if we take in this thing and go, hey, can we get down to a community level feedback system that is public, that has nodes, where we can see the structure of it, where you've got your member for whatever region, like they have to build this as part of their policy. And then this becomes transparent, becomes just full flowing up. Because like the real key decisions, they're not going to be, like it's becoming obvious now that like this system is maintaining itself in obscurity. And what the risk is by doing that in this day and age is you're gonna obscure yourself out of relevance and out of respect. And that's where you then get someone has the ability to come in and go, this whole system's fucked. I'm the king, I'm gonna take over. And I just really do worry And I think the whole world is worried. That's why you get these figures that are blowing up in different things, and they're frightening. And whether they're just, I think they're actually just propped up on purpose to kind of make people more afraid of that. But let's, rather than identity politics, let's get down to let's identify our politics as a structural stable, as a stable structure. That should be the identity. Let's differentiate ourselves from other regions in the world by going, so we don't have identity politics. We identify our political structure as the identity. That's the icon. If we get to Australia, we go, oh, do you know what Australia has? Australia has this really streamlined, beautiful system of government that they adapted after the pandemic when everyone else was trying to position these identity politicians. They identified themselves with a structure. And this is what everyone does. It's like when you think of the government, you think of Parliament House, a structure that symbolises the structure of government. Whereas now we're off in some, it just is not like that. We need to reunify that structure and design it to be current. And you get there by reading the bloody Constitution, and you get there by knowing fully about why these structures were put in existence and not just being in there. And I'm sorry, but you all do just do that. You've just got in something, whatever point you wanted to get into politics, you got in there, you went, okay, this is this, I've got to do this, and you're on a game. You're in a game. I've got to wait for this guy to get out, and then I'll get in, and then I'll get that, I get more money, I get this, I get a better car, I get to fucking parade around like I'm the hero, rah, rah, rah. But you're also disconnected from the idea that is that structure. And that's just going to be exposed. And I don't think, so that my message is whereas in America you've got loudmouth people trying to get in, and I could probably do that, but I don't want to. It doesn't, I don't want to degrade Australia into having some person loudmouth, barraging their way in and doing the thing, because I know the emphasis will become on the wrong thing. I don't want to set that precedent of busting in and being like, oh, I'm going to make change and rah, rah, hoorah. That's dangerous behaviour. The appropriate measures that should be taken by the Australian government are to openly discuss this structure. Hey, do you know what government is? It's a structure. It's a structure of stability that was established to create stability. And with technological changes and environmental changes and social changes and all these things, it has gotten itself out of whack. So we're now openly talking about how this structure of government is the most important thing. Make maps, show people what happens, show people the ladders, the interactions, and then show people where it's going to change. It's going to change from the bottom down. It's going to change from the local level. We're incorporating local feedback systems where you can go in and visually see that the talk that is going on the community level up to the next level, and you can make it less and less. Obviously when you go up the levels, you're going to get, politics going on. You're going to get things going on. But we need to see it. Right now, it just, all we saw during the pandemic was the premiers standing out and saying this, and it's that's not good enough. That is not going to happen again. You can't run these states under one person. And that was the biggest thing that was the biggest indicator that we're in some type of fucking bullshit. That never should have been that. Premiers should not be allowed to do that. Premiers is the premier of your party, not of the state. You're not the fucking ruler of this state. You're the ruler of your party. It's the same with the police. You're not the fucking ruler of the police. The police have laws that they govern, and they do that. And this is where it's just out of whack. When I'm doing these things, it's like, I could have had a discussion with a policeman on equal terms. Hey, Shannon, what exactly are you doing? What's this about? Instead, I get arrested for something. It's like, I'm trying to map out, hey, this is a precedent that is not healthy. And this is where, like, that's not how that structure is worded. The Premier is the Premier of his party of government. He is running government. He is not running the people of the state. And this should be just everywhere. Everyone should know this. So say COVID measures come in, you can go as the Premier, right, the local member for here, then the local area deals with that local representative. Not this broadcast, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this. You can say the Premier has instructed his people to make this change. And then we all get to look at that person and go, no, we're not doing it. Not this top-down bullshit. Ever. And it's just like, if that is attempted again, that will be considered an act of war and will immediately go in to disable infrastructure. Immediately. That is not how this constitution is written. You are in there to govern the state, to make sure the state is stable. And that created nothing but destabilization in every area. And I don't know really what pushed it off. I don't know whether it was a global fucking effort to do something. Oh, that's what it looks like. But whether it's just controlling interests or systemic corruption, whatever it is, that's not how this system is built. And if we have any chance in recovering this structure, the structure needs to be remapped out. And we need to go, everyone knows that it was wrong. So we need to go, okay, it was wrong. Why did it go wrong? It went wrong because we had this top-down model. Everything I interacted with was the Premier telling me to do stuff and thing. Never again. Never. I don't fucking work for the Premier. I've never sworn an oath to the Premier. I've never done anything to the Premier. The Premier is the boss of his fucking entity that is meant to make order in the state. That's it. That's all you are. And that reality check needs to be fucking heard loud and clear. And you need to realise the precarious position that you're in. And if you are putting in jeopardy that structure that is the only thing keeping the fucking barbarians from the gates, then that is an act of treason. It's against the Australian people. So this should be first on the list of things to do. That structure needs to be sound. And if you don't fucking make it sound, I'll make it sound. And I don't know what point do we have to get to make this clear? To make this a number one priority. The world is fucking like this right now. One flare up anywhere can fuck the whole thing up. One flare up in one demographic in our population can flare up something that's out of control, and we're just fucked then. And you're not going to get the same thing of just the Premier sitting there. That structure needs to be stable the whole way down. Do you know what I mean? Have vocal fucking party meetings. Hey, this is our cabinet. This is our structure. This is the person here. This is the person here. They're responsible for this. Map it out. Tell us what's going on. Because you're never, ever, 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 ever going to get away with the same shit again. And whereas I think there was wrongdoings in that, the way that happened, because it was stupid and what didn't make sense. If we need you, you're fucked. It's not going to work again. It's like the boy who cried wolf. So that every level of government should be having unifying meetings of going, hey, we need to fucking reinforce, we need to rebuild the trust that we lost and acknowledge the structural flaws that we had in incorporation with the technological advancements. So yeah, that was long, passionate. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing something.